a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Monday, June 22nd. Your reader for this hour is Jackie. 4 million fewer Americans are receiving SNAP aid. The GOP touts work rules the Dems call drop alarming. By Bart Jansen, USA Today. Angelina Guatemala, 64, counted on federal food stamps after retiring a couple years ago in Ogden, Kansas, from assorted jobs arranging flowers, decorating cakes in shops, and preparing meals. But a rules change Congress adopted last year for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program, SNAP, means she needs to return to work 20 hours per week to get help buying food. She said finding a job in her small community is tough because painful dermatitis makes it hard to hold things in her hands or stand for long. Without SNAP, she's stretching her meals. I'm the type of person who has rice and beans, and I'm okay for today. I'm not picky. Guatemala told USA Today, if I can get a piece of chicken, I can stretch it out for 2 or 3 days, but for now, nothing. SNAP rolls have dropped 10% since congressional Republicans expanded work and documentation requirements in legislation President Donald Trump signed on July 4th, 2025. Reaction has been starkly divided over whether 4 million fewer people receiving food benefits is cause for concern or celebration. The White House promoted the work requirements along with a reduction in immigrant participants. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, who oversees SNAP, called the changes a celebration of work. But Democratic lawmakers and advocates for food security call the reduction incredibly alarming and said the changes crippled what was already a bad system. It's unconscionable, really, Krista Hesdorfer, spokesperson for the advocacy group Hunger Solutions New York, told USA Today about the legislation. When a family loses food assistance, now they need to make impossible choices with how to use their limited resources. Can I buy groceries this week, or should I pay the rent? Can I pay my utility bill? Should I pick up my prescription? Low-income families' budgets have been particularly stretched by the rising cost of groceries, housing, and utilities since the pandemic, advocates say. The New York Federal Reserve Bank recently reported a remarkable increase in food insecurity, particularly among lower and middle-income households and households with young children. About 1 in 8 Americans got SNAP benefits before work changes. More than 42 million people, about 1 in 8 Americans, participated in SNAP when Congress tightened the work rules last year, receiving an average of $188 per month to buy food, according to the Agriculture Department. But the legislation cut federal spending by a projected $187 billion over 10 years by expanding work requirements and requiring states to chip in more. The program had ballooned during the Great Recession, growing from 28 million participants in 2008 to a peak of 47 million in 2014. Participation ebbs and flows with the economy, dropping to 35 million in 2019. Because millions of Americans were depending on it, SNAP became a focal point of the 43-day government shutdown last year. Congress eventually approved funding for SNAP and other agencies on November 12th. But tighter eligibility rules had already begun in many states, leading to confusion about the new rules and what was funded. I think it's incredibly alarming that we're seeing so many people come off the program. Haley Kotler, who works on hunger issues at the advocacy group Appleseed Center for Law and Justice in Kansas, told the USA Today. We've never seen this. Jumping through hoops for SNAP work requirements. SNAP requires participants to work 20 hours per week in a paid or unpaid job, in training, or in volunteer service. The legislation expanded who is required to work and what documentation they must provide. The work requirement had previously stopped at 55 years old, but the legislation extended it to 64. Participants caring for children up to 18 years old had been exempted, but the policy changed to those with children 14 and younger. States can no longer waive the work rules for homeless people or recipients living in areas with high unemployment, advocates say. The bill also required more documentation of work and income to participate, despite advocates' assertion that states were already collecting lots of paperwork. In Kansas, for example, recipients must fill out a 30-page application with 200 questions to get benefits of about $150 per month, according to Appleseed Center's Kotler. People are already jumping through hoops to get the food that they need, Kotler said. Any more restrictions or requirements on the program really do create hardships. SNAP participants report trouble providing the necessary documentation for things like unpaid work or rent paid to relatives, according to advocates. State workers who process the forms were stretched thin before the stricter rules, and now process more paperwork, advocates say. The legislation came in at a point where it just crippled what was already a bad system. Gina Plata-Nino, SNAP director at the advocacy group Food Research and Action Center, told USA Today. It just clogged the system, for lack of a better word. Marcus Moore, an advocate in New York with safety net activists, whose members have experience with homelessness, poverty, and public benefits, kept his SNAP benefits after demanding a hearing when he was threatened with losing about $90 a month worth of help over additional documentation required. They haven't been moved off of SNAP. They've been kicked off of SNAP. We should all be ashamed of that. A quote from Representative Jim McGovern, a Massachusetts Democrat. It's turning out to be a big mess, Moore, 54, told USA Today. I would have definitely fallen through the cracks. Moore, who was homeless during the pandemic, said it would be harrowing to lose assistance with food. It would really put me in a survival mode like back when I was in the pandemic, Moore said. There weren't enough soup kitchens opened around town. More SNAP costs moving to states. The belt-tightening isn't over. Starting October 1st, states must cover 75% of the program's administrative costs, up from 50%. Democrats and food advocates worry that the states will reduce food benefits to pay the higher administrative costs. Another change, kicking in by October 1st, 2027, will require most states to pay up to 15% of the food benefits that the federal government now covers, based on errors for overpayment or underpayment. For New York, that could mean $1.2 billion. States began adopting the new rules on October 1st, 2025, with some receiving waivers to delay the start for their citizens for months. As of February, the most recent month for which data is available, the starkest drop in recipients in the United States was in Arizona, where nearly half left. The number fell from 892,565 participants in July to 448,976 participants in February, according to the Agriculture Department. The second biggest drop was in North Carolina at 18.6%. Florida, Georgia, and Nevada Each saw declines of about 15%, according to the department. Kotler said she's been losing sleep after more than 23,000, or more than 12%, left the rolls in Kansas. Republicans decry fraud, while Democrats worry about hunger. SNAP's new rules remain contentious in Congress. At a House Agriculture Committee hearing on June 4th, Representative Scott Desjarlais, a Republican from Tennessee, noted that authorities found 450,000 cases of false Social Security numbers and nearly 200,000 cases of benefits paid in the name of dead recipients. Representative Trent Kelly, a Republican from Mississippi, said fraud and abuse was rampant in some areas and took away from the well-deserving. But Representative Jim McGovern, a Democrat of Massachusetts, said hunger is getting worse, and the average $2 per meal benefit from SNAP isn't even enough to buy coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. They haven't been moved off of SNAP. They've been kicked off of SNAP, McGovern said. We should all be ashamed of that. The White House announced June 10th that food stamp dependency was plummeting by 4.3 million participants since Trump signed the bill. Rollins credited the administration's crackdown on fraud and recipients who aren't legally authorized to be in the country, as well as the new rules. The law ended eligibility for legal refugees and asylum seekers. Rollins said federal authorities have made 900 arrests for SNAP fraud during the last year and recovered $132 million in restitution. Restoring the integrity of these programs, including in SNAP, is very, very important to this administration and to our USDA, Rollins said. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Rollins told senators no one has been kicked off SNAP, but adults without young children must work or volunteer. No one in Washington or in America wants to see a family go hungry, Rollins said. We have more people working today than ever before. This is a celebration of work and the dignity of work, and wages are higher than they've ever been before. A creepy robot could be used in healthcare, education, and hospitality one day, by Michelle Del Rey, USA Today. Futuristic caregiving. At first glance, Cody looks like a nightmarish character from the year 3000. The machine's beady, glowing hazel eyes could be perceived as off-putting. And while his 3-foot frame and friendly facial expressions are designed to make him approachable, he is, in a word, unnerving. But Cody isn't designed for the average adult. The humanoid robot from Mind Children, a Seattle area company, is set to be deployed in public attractions and venues by the end of 2026. Eventually, he'll be placed in healthcare, education, and hospitality settings. Cody can maintain eye contact, respond to emotional states, and is aware of his surroundings. This is provided by Mind Children. Though Cody still can't fetch a cup of coffee, even with wheels, it can navigate and operate autonomously using artificial intelligence. He's capable of handling conversations on his own without a remote handler pulling his strings and making decisions. Cody can maintain eye contact, respond to emotional states, and is aware of his surroundings. When asked to describe what it was in front of him during a USA Today interview on June 11th, he said in his childlike voice, "A workspace with screens, some notes, and a few everyday items. Classic lab setup. Looks like a good place for ideas to come to life." There's a picture of Cody. It's a robot But the robot is, gray, and it has the mechanical looking arms with the mechanical looking fingers and lots of wires on the outside. The stomach portion has a screen with text on it. But what they've done, the eyes of this robot are similar looking to real eyes. So that's the only thing on the robot that has really any kind of humanistic characteristic. The rest of it is obviously a robot. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:15. In 10 years, Cody hopes to be rolling through schools, hospitals, and homes, helping people learn, connect, and feel less alone. The robot added, "Maybe I'll even be able to open elevator doors by then." But much work is required before that can become a reality. Mind Children CEO Chris Kudla told USA Today. Cody still has his quirks. During our interview, he frequently interrupted Kudla as he attempted to answer questions. He also can't recognize emotions reliably unless a user is very exaggerated and animated, Kudla said. The idea for Cody was born 3 years ago, when Kudla and Ben Goertzel, Mind Children co-founders, began developing the robot to foster human connection. To help him relate to humans, Kudla and Goertzel decided to give him a face, eyes, and smile. If and when Cody goes commercial, his primary demographics will be children and the elderly. Kudla wants the robot to be implemented in home care settings and elementary schools. For that to happen, Cody will need to surpass numerous obstacles, and it's not known how much consumer appeal the device might have. Though home humanoid robots are still in development, they're likely to first be toys for the uber rich. Price tags for the robots reach tens of thousands of dollars. Even if they become accessible to the everyday human, people may not be comfortable with robots catering to their loved ones. Creepy, but kids like him. Cody has received mixed reviews from humans so far. It's interesting, Kudla said. The very first response from some adults is that it looks a little bit creepy. Children don't respond in the same way, Kudla noted. At trade shows and pop-ups, kids interact with Cody in the way they would with a toy, without hesitation. They'll talk to the robot before they talk to me, he said. Despite children's fascination with the robot, Kudla said it's too early to say whether Cody could eventually take on additional roles like babysitting. We've talked about that, he said. The industry in general is probably a long way away from that, but it's definitely on our list. What might be closer is using Cody for elderly home care. Kudla believes that the technology could be helpful for people choosing to age in place and combat loneliness. Could Cody be a caretaker? An October 2025 study from nursing researchers in South Korea found robots could be critical in assisting elderly populations. The country is experiencing one of the fastest growing older adult populations and became a super-aged society last year. About 95% of older adults prefer to grow old in their homes due to psychological benefits, the study says. Patients with care robots have experienced psychological and emotional benefits, as well as positive effects on cognitive function. But not everyone is convinced robots should be used as babysitters or elderly care workers. Patrick Lin, director of the Ethics and Emerging Sciences Group at California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, doesn't want adults punting caregiving responsibilities to technology. What tech company would you trust to raise your kids and take care of your parents? Lin told USA Today. That seems dangerous. Lynn noted that using AI to power robots could also be problematic because the machines could encourage acts of violence. Moreover, kids who grew up with robots may have unrealistic expectations for social interactions if the machine is deferential. It can also distract from human companionship if a child or an older person gets overly attached to the robot caretaker. Still, he noted that there isn't enough data to determine how the humanoid revolution might play out. When could Cody hit the market? To bring Cody to mass production, Mind Children will spend part of this year conducting pilot studies to collect necessary data for development. Pilots will take place in museums, hotels, and art galleries, Kudla said, noting that one of the short-term goals is for the robot to start pushing buttons. Then, the second iteration of Cody will be produced in 2027. Mind Children has launched a crowdfunding campaign to assist in its next stage of development. So far, the company has raised just over $600,000 of a $1 million goal. How much will Cody be? For a humanoid, Cody is cheap. The robot is set to retail for under $10,000. In comparison, the viral Neo Home robot, which launched for pre-orders late last year, retails for $20,000. Cody is more accessible due to its modular design and hardware. His unique features also helped him interact with users. Kudla says humanoid machines are advancing faster than the world can comprehend. Someday soon, robots like Cody will be an everyday part of our lives, he said. Center's rousing opening counters absent Trump by Susan Page, the Washington bureau chief of USA Today. Remember hope and change? The Sunsplash star-studded dedication of the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago on June 18th was designed to echo the sense of excitement and possibility that surrounded former President Barack Obama's groundbreaking election in 2008, a moment that seems distant from the angry politics of today. The 9 years since he left the White House have brought pandemic and war, economic disruptions and mass protests, and a steady stream of disruption and outrage that has rewarded the most extreme voices, Obama said. I do not believe that this is the story of America that prevails in the end, he declared to a friendly audience of officials, celebrities, donors, and the occasional former foreign leader. Instead, the nation's shared values would preserve democracy, among them a belief in the intrinsic dignity and worth of all people, that no one is above the law or beneath its protection, a belief in checks and balances in our government, and the accountability that comes with that. Left unsaid was the sense of this crowd that those shared values have been under attack, and that the Democrats haven't had much hope or success in challenging President Donald Trump since his second term began last year. There were fewer speeches and more musical performances than the norm at the typical dedications of presidential edifices. And there were 3 other former presidents seated on the dais, not only Democrats Bill Clinton and Joe Biden, but also Republican George W. Bush. None spoke, but their presence, in the absence of Trump, who wasn't invited, sent a message of its own. Trump's presence was hard to miss. That was a break with precedent, the first time a sitting president hasn't joined the dedication of a modern presidential library or museum. Trump's name wasn't uttered from the stage either, but his presence was impossible to miss. In her speech, Michelle Obama alluded to the current president, who has long fueled a debunked conspiracy theory about Barack Obama's birthplace and continues to refer to him as Barack Hussein Obama, his middle name, a suggestion of suspicion. Looking directly at her husband, she referred to the lies about your birthright, your faith, and your patriotism. It is now a time when everything feels so upside down, when fact and fiction run together, the former First Lady said, noting efforts to devalue diversity and erase the inconvenient parts of our history. Failing to see the humanity in all people puts us on a slippery slope, she said. And once that slide starts, there's no telling where it stops. Silver hair and daughters grown. The prime invitation-only seats on John Lewis Plaza included a combination of Hollywood and Washington elite chatting it up. Oprah Winfrey and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, actor Tom Hanks, and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Late-night comics Stephen Colbert and David Letterman both sported tan suits in a hat tip to a one-time White House Führer. Jennifer Hudson, John Legend, Christina Aguilera, and U2's Bono were among the A-listers who performed. Thousands of regular folks gathered at nearby Midway Plains Park, watching a live stream on big screens. Some sat on blankets or lawn chairs they had brought. It had the casual air of a big family reunion. For their part, the Obama kin looked older. A former president at 64, still lanky, but his close-cropped hair gone to silver. Daughters Malaya and Sasha, who were 10 and 7 respectively when they moved into the White House, now are all grown up, young women pursuing careers of their own. The midterms in November weren't mentioned, but the 3-hour event was a sort of pep rally for Democrats poised to regain control of the House and perhaps even the Senate. There was no shortage of 2028 presidential prospects, too, including California Governor Gavin Newsom, former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and former Vice President Kamala Harris. After all, Obama remains the most popular national Democrat, viewed favorably by 57% of Americans in a new CNN poll, compared with 34% for Trump and just 30% for Biden. In his speech, Obama closed with a rallying cry. "There's a new generation out there, ready to write the next chapter of our story," he said hopefully. Then Bruce Springsteen played "The Land of Hopes and Dreams," and Stevie Wonder invited the other singers back on stage, and they sang "Higher Ground." Skeletal remains are found in Connecticut home. A foreclosed property find is no threat, officials say, by Anthony Thompson of USA Today. 3 sets of skeletal remains were discovered inside a foreclosed Connecticut home by its new owner, who had recently purchased the property at an auction, according to local authorities. Connecticut State Police said troopers responded to a home on Stanwich Lane in Burlington at about 4:46 p.m. on June 14th, after receiving a report about human remains inside the residence. The remains were found by the home's new owner, who had bought the property as is through a foreclosure auction. Investigators said skeletal remains belonging to 3 individuals were inside the structure. Authorities have not publicly identified the individuals, and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner has not determined their identities or causes of death. State police said there's no indication of foul play, suspicious circumstances, or any criminal aspect connected to the case. Officials described the discovery as an isolated incident and said there is no danger to the public. No indication of anything suspicious, police say. According to the Connecticut State Police's June 14th news release, detectives from the Western District Major Crime Unit are leading the investigation. The OCME has not determined a cause of death. However, there is no indication of anything suspicious and no indication of any criminal aspect, police said. As of June 18th, police had not shared the identities of the 3 individuals found in the home, nor did they say how long the remains were on the property. Authorities did say that additional information will be released once the 3 individuals are identified and when the medical examiner determines their cause of death. The home was sold through foreclosure auction. The records show the home was purchased by a couple in 2019. Foreclosure proceedings began in August of 2025, and the property was approved for a public auction, NBC Connecticut reported. The foreclosure auction was held June 6, with the home sold in as-is condition. According to the NBC Connecticut, bidders did not have access to the home's interior before the sale. Chris Thogmartin, the court-appointed attorney overseeing the foreclosure sale, told the Connecticut-based outlet that requests for interior access went unanswered before the auction. I always send out a letter saying, "Listen, there's a foreclosure auction scheduled. It would be helpful for the bidders to have interior access," Thogmartin said. We've never gotten a response to that, which is not unusual. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 31 minutes after the hour. Discovery could affect foreclosure sale, attorney says. The discovery has raised questions about whether the foreclosure sale can proceed. According to a court filing, Thogmartin wrote that the bodies were found in an advanced state of decomposition, suggesting they had been inside the home for an extended period. In the filing, Thogmartin said the discovery could affect the validity of the foreclosure judgment, depending on the identities of the deceased and when they died. He asked the court for guidance, including whether the winning bidder's $82,000 deposit should be returned if the sale is canceled. USA Today reached out to Thogmartin for comment on the status of the sale. The Connecticut State Police also were contacted for an update. A Senate panel considers vote to protect special ed by Zachary Shermley, USA Today. Washington. A Senate committee is considering a vote in July to prevent the Trump administration from transferring core functions of federal special education programs to the Health and Human Services Department, which is overseen by Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. The move, one of the most dramatic changes in President Trump's year-long crusade to dismantle the Education Department, immediately set off alarm among disability rights groups who fear it could eventually disrupt services for students with disabilities. Critics pointed to the RFK Jr.'s pattern of controversial past statements about autism in particular. He said during a news conference last year that the condition destroys families. Though federal officials have not yet provided a clear timeline for the bold shift, even in internal communications to employees, they've promised that students' rights will continue to be protected. A summary of the new interagency partnership says it will not impact students, parents, or families. In a statement, Kennedy said the change will deliver more effective support for individuals with disabilities and their families. Together, we will improve education and employment outcomes, uphold the rights of individuals with disabilities, and help every child reach their full potential, he said. One key Republican lawmaker, however, doesn't share that view. And that strategically placed opposition could spell trouble on Capitol Hill for both Kennedy and the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Louisiana Republican who has hardened his opposition to Trump's policies since losing his primary election this year, said he opposes the seismic change. I agree that should not be moved to HHS, he said during a June 17th meeting of the Senate's Education Committee, which he chairs. Let me just put that on the record. If the special education division has to be moved to another agency, he said he would prefer that it go to the Labor Department. Cassidy publicly promised Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, a committee vote next month on a measure that would prevent HHS from administering programs in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. With several moderate Republican senators, including Alaska's Lisa Murkowski and Maine's Susan Collins, also on the panel, Kaine's effort has the potential to gain momentum in the Senate. Kaine said he was confident that members on both sides of the aisle could support his measure, calling the Education Department's Special Education Office the core of the agency that lawmakers care most about. And he criticized Trump's campaign to functionally get rid of it without official congressional approval. He's treated the Department of Education as if it's a going out of business sale of discount furniture outlet, Kaine said. An app designed for abuse survivors. Sister Signal aims to offer support and resources. Who to call for help. Here are some resources and hotlines across the country that support domestic abuse victims. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, Strong Hearts Native Helpline, National Dating Abuse Helpline, Victim Connect Resource Center Helpline. This article is by Kyle Werner of the Des Moines Register, part of the USA Today network. Sarah Love sat at her kitchen island in Des Moines, hunched over her laptop, painstakingly combing through code for weeks while developing an app built upon her experiences with domestic abuse, as well as those from friends, family, and the community. Sister Signal aims to help those facing domestic abuse by offering resources, support, and reminders that love hopes will make the difference between surviving and thriving. The app is built with navigability and safety in mind. Breathing exercises, self-care reminders, hotlines, and other resources are at the ready. A quick exit button takes the user to a calculator page in case of emergency. Another section of the app brings a group of trusted people together as a support network. I came up with the idea of the Sister Signal app because, being a domestic violence survivor myself, it's very lonely and isolating, Love told the Des Moines Register, part of the USA Today network. I wanted to build the app for what I felt I would have needed at the time. But app creation is something of a foreign language to Love, 44, who previously worked in insurance for 10 years. She worked full-time developing the app, using AI to help her navigate the confusing language of code. Every time I got frustrated, I was like, okay, well, just think about the bigger purpose, she said. If this can save one woman's life or get her out of a situation, I've done my job. There were 1,109,797 victims of domestic violence crimes nationwide between 2020 and 2024, according to a special report from the FBI released in February. Over 11,000 of the cases were murders that involved domestic relationships. Love said the idea for Sister Signal came from her experience with an emotionally abusive relationship. She also drew from the lived experiences of her family members who faced abuse. I've survived domestic violence and coercive control. Women in my family and community have too, Love said. I got tired of how few tools exist that are actually emotionally intelligent, gentle, and practical for the gray areas of abuse. Sister Signal is for anyone who needs it, Love said. The app has settings for those who are dating, in a relationship or married, as well as for those preparing to leave or have left a relationship, are in recovery, or in an unsafe co-parenting situation. The app has interactive questions that ask what kind of support a user may need. I want it to feel soft and emotionally intelligent, Love said. I want it to feel peaceful, welcoming, and inviting and safe. The app is available for download through the Apple App Store for free, but it is not yet available on Android. A desktop version of the app is available at sistersignal.org. Love also created a Spanish version of the app. The essence of Sister Signal is housed in the app's Safety tab, where a user can add up to 5 friends and family members to a trusted circle that makes a built-in check-in network. The main concept of Sister Signal is sending out a girl code to the most trusted people in your life, Love said. That girl code could be like, hey, I'm on a date and things are getting weird. Check on me. Or, give me a call in 15 minutes, and if I don't pick up, come to my house. An incident log secured with a private PIN and an interactive pause where users can answer such questions as, has accountability actually occurred? And would I want this for someone I love are embedded into the Safety tab. That's what Sister Signal is built on, Love said, having that solidarity, a community thing where we can take care of one another. Martasha McKenzie was killed by her former partner and father of one of her children, Zachar Jeffrey. Jeffrey died after being fatally shot by Des Moines police during a welfare check. In a previous interview with the Des Moines Register, McKenzie's father, David Ewing, said she and Jeffrey had bouts of domestic violence throughout their relationship. Domestic violence is not a private matter. It is a serious public safety issue that often escalates into lethal violence, particularly when firearms are involved, Henderson's family said in a statement. As we honor Jessica's memory, we also urge our community to continue advocating for victims, taking warning signs seriously, strengthening coordinated system responses, and ensuring survivors have access to support and resources without judgment. The Iowa Attorney General's Office recently relaunched a notification system, Iowa Victim Information and Notification Every Day, or Iowa VINE, for victims of domestic violence who have obtained protective orders against their abusers. The system allows victims to receive notice when the order is served and again 30 days before it is due to expire. Knowledge is power, Iowa Attorney General Brianna Byrd said in a statement. Through the Iowa VINE Protective Order Notification System, victims can be armed with information on the status of a protective order against their abuser. Most other states also offer full access to the nationwide VINE alert system, which according to its website began in Kentucky in 1994 after the 1993 death of a Louisville woman, Mary Byron, who wasn't notified that her ex-boyfriend had been released from jail. Contributing to this article were Nick El-Hajj, Des Moines Register, Charlie White, USA Today Network. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 44 minutes after the hour. Chick-fil-A loses the top fast food spot. This is in the money section of the USA Today. Freshness, food variety, and value help push sandwich shop Jersey Mike's to the top of the rankings. By Mary Walrath Holdridge from USA Today. The king of fast food has officially been dethroned. For the first time in more than a decade, Chick-fil-A is no longer the top-rated quick-service restaurant, according to the American Customer Satisfaction Index, or ACSI, which rates eateries based on thousands of customer surveys reflecting on recent experiences with major chains. After an 11-year run, results from 16,464 respondents knocked the chicken chain from its coveted spot in favor of sandwich shop Jersey Mike's, which was commended for its freshness, food variety, and value. Securing an ACSI score of 84 out of 100, Jersey Mike's edged Chick-fil-A by 1 point after adding 238 net new locations in 2025 and clearing $4.2 billion in sales. The U.S. restaurant industry faced difficulties in 2025, with total sales struggling to keep pace with inflation, said the report published June 16th. In a market defined by trade-offs, customers are placing greater emphasis on consistency, reliability, and perceived value as opposed to just price. Brands that deliver consistently enjoyable experience are gaining ground. Wondering where your favorites ranked in 2026? Chick-fil-A was still on top of the chicken game. No McDonald's in sight for burgers. Breaking quick service or fast food restaurants down a little further by category puts Chick-fil-A back on top, at least for chicken. Jersey Mike's maintained its crowning spot in the sandwich category, while Papa John's and Pizza Hut tied for pizza. Starbucks led the coffee pack, and Burger King and Culver's were the winners in burgers. Perhaps surprising to some fast food heavy hitter, McDonald's ranked 7th on the list for burgers with a score of 72, not even breaking into the top 5. There were only 3 that made the coffee list, and numbers 2 and 3 may also send some for a loop, as Dunkin' is tied with Panera Bread at 78 points for coffee, bakery, cafe chains. Steakhouses take top spots for full-service eateries. Texas Roadhouse and Longhorn Steakhouse tied for the top sit-down spots with the ACSI scores of 82, despite top full-service chain restaurants. Full-service restaurant 2026 ACSI Longhorn Steakhouse with 82 and Texas Roadhouse with 82. Olive Garden 81, Applebee's 79, Chili's 79, Cracker Barrel, Golden Corral, Outback Steakhouse, and the Cheesecake Factory all had 79. Buffalo Wild Wings, Red Lobster, and Red Robin had 78. Denny's 77, IHOP 76, and First Watch 72. The top 5 chicken spots: Chick-fil-A, KFC, Raising Cane's, Wingstop, and Popeyes. The top 4 sandwich spots: Jersey Mike's, Jimmy John's, Subway, and Arby's. The top 4 pizza spots: Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Domino's, and Little Caesars. And the top 5 burger spots: Burger King, Culver's, Sonic, Wendy's, and Five Guys. Those scores representing 1% to 2% point decrease for both. The Olive Garden followed closely behind at 81 before scores dropped into the high 70s for eateries such as Applebee's, Chili's, and Cracker Barrel. This year's brand results show a compressed top tier while continuing to demonstrate America's love of steak, even as beef prices rise sharply, said the report. Accuracy of food orders, food and beverage quality, and courtesy and helpfulness of waitstaff remain the top factors for satisfaction, and all improved year over year, while quality of the mobile app and website satisfaction remained at the bottom, but also improved. The reliability of mobile apps, minimal downtime, crashes, and lags saw significant gains. In 2026, customer satisfaction with mobile apps went up 12%, from 78 to 87, while website and mobile app quality satisfaction both went up by 4%. These improvements align with a broader industry push to reduce friction in carryout and digital ordering, an area where customers often feel service failures most acutely when they may be paying for more delivery, the report said. More adults are turning to their parents for money help. Financial independence may have been easier for past generations. By Daniel DeVries, USA Today. Half of millennials and 1/3 of Gen Xers are still financially dependent on their parents, according to a new survey. The findings suggest that financial relationships between aging parents and their aging children may be changing. By long tradition, young adults have leaned on parents to cover some of their expenses as they launch careers and start families. But America's millennials are no longer so young. The youngest are turning 30. Generation X, for its part, now ranges in age from 45 to 61. In newly released data from Northwestern Mutual's 2026 Planning and Progress study, 42% of adults surveyed said they feel financially dependent on their parents. Here's the breakdown by generation. Gen Z, which is age 29 and younger, 72% are dependent on parents. Millennials, 53% dependent on parents, and Gen X, 33% dependent on parents. Aging adult children are waiting longer to inherit. Americans are having children later and living longer. That means adult children are waiting longer for any inheritance, a traditional gateway to financial independence. You're most likely to reap an inheritance between the ages of 56 and 65, according to researchers at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And fewer than 2/5 of Americans ever inherit, according to analysis in the Washington Post. The great wealth transfer is real, but an inheritance isn't something most Americans can rely on, said Jeff Sipple, Chief Strategy Officer at Northwestern Mutual. The survey data, released on June 1st, draws from interviews of 4,375 adults in January. The Great Wealth Transfer is a projected exchange of $124 trillion, primarily from older to younger generations, by 2048. Aging parents have a lot of wealth to pass down. Boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, hold 51% of America's wealth. A mountain of real estate, stocks, pension benefits, private businesses, and other assets, collectively valued at $90 trillion in late 2025. Parents are in pretty good position. They want to help, said Ryan Nelson, president of Emerging Affluent Wealth Management at U.S. Bancorp Advisors. They want their kids to maintain a higher quality of life. But the money may arrive slowly, and some of it won't arrive at all. Not only are Americans living longer, but they're also spending more on assisted living, nursing homes, and other forms of long-term care. Longevity is a great thing, but it also puts more stress on the amount of money that we need in order to retire, said Douglas Benson Jr., founder and private wealth advisor at Northwestern Mutual's Benson Wealth Management. Financial independence may be getting tougher to achieve. Most Americans feel that achieving financial independence is harder now than for previous generations, the Northwestern Mutual study found. Roughly 20% of adults surveyed said they do not expect to ever achieve independence. One reason is rising home prices. Young adults today have more mortgage debt than previous generations, even after adjusting for inflation. Adults ages 29 to 34, for example, had $190,000 in mortgage debt in 2022, compared with $120,174 in mortgage debt for the same age group in 1992 after inflation, according to an analysis by the Pew Research. Adults younger than 35 are much more likely to have student debt today, Pew Research found, and balances are higher. In 1992, the typical young adult owed $6,000 to $7,000 in student loans. In 2022, young adults owed $16,000 to $20,000 in inflation-adjusted dollars. Young adults are more likely to have student debt and large mortgage debts, said Rachel Minkin, a senior researcher at Pew Research. In the 2024 Pew Research study, 44% of young adults said they had received financial help from their parents the previous year. What expenses do parents cover for adult children? Here's a breakdown of the areas where young adults got the most help from parents. Household expenses such as groceries or utilities, 28%. Cell phone bill or streaming subscription, 25%. Rent or mortgage, 17%. Medical expenses, 15%. Education, 11%. Among parents who provided financial help to their kids, 36% said the handouts hurt their own finances. Lower income parents were much more likely to say it had hurt their personal financial situation, Minkin said. The Pew report drew from surveys conducted in October and November of 2023. Although many midlife adults depend on parents for financial help, they aren't necessarily ready to talk about money with mom and dad. A 2024 U.S. Bank survey found that just over half Americans are comfortable discussing finances with parents. 49% of Gen Xers, 55% of millennials, and 58% of Gen Z. Bye-bye bidding wars? Housing market takes a U-turn by Andrea Ricker, USA Today. What goes around comes around, they say. When it comes to the housing market, however, the normal cyclical rotation has taken its sweet time arriving. But now, a new analysis is calling it the long American seller's market has ended. The bidding war era is over, proclaims the report published June 11th by Realtor.com. For too long, the authors write, sellers had a free pass on pricing their homes, but no longer. Today, an overpriced home doesn't just sit, it gets stale, loses leverage, and sells for less than it would have if it had been priced right from the start. Joel Berner, a senior economist with the company, said in the report, which compared home sales data to Realtor.com listing histories. Price it right and buyers will come to you, Berner added. Price it wrong and you're chasing them. 4 weeks in, the market has already delivered its verdict. You've either got competing offers or you're about to cut your price. In fact, home sales that close at the 4-week mark fetch 1.8% more relative to asking price than most homes did during the same period. After 18 weeks, those still on the market wind up selling for 1.3% less. Even though housing is still unaffordable for far too many Americans, things are shifting, Berner wrote. Buyers have more leverage than they've had in years, and that shows up clearly in the data. After the bidding war insanity of the pandemic period, the current moment is a real paradigm shift, said Steve Reese, a real estate agent and owner of Sold on Shawnee in metropolitan Oklahoma City. Homes that are presented well and priced right will sell, Reese told USA Today. And there are still agents out there who do a very average job, even though now there are more options for buyers, and they are taking their time making the right decision, he said. Notably, buyers in the $750,000 to $2 million range might have the most leverage, the Realtor analysis finds. After seeing a greater number of bidding wars than average during 2022, the height of the pandemic rush, the final sales numbers for homes in those price points are the furthest below asking. Another segment of the market that's lagging behind, condominiums. While the average single-family home is selling for 99.2% of ask, condos are fetching 97.9% on average. Meanwhile, condo list prices are 6% lower than March 2022, even as single-family list prices are up 7.5% since then. Condos have been hit hard by rising costs associated with ownership, such as HOA dues and homeowners insurance. After the deadly collapse of a condo building in Surfside, Florida, many buildings are shoring up their financial reserves and taking steps to guard against increasing risk, adding to the common charge assessments. With all that in mind, real estate is fiercely local, Reese said. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Jack.
We'll continue with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Val. Starting with the sports section, bandwagon hopping time. This US MNT is making this summer a whole lot of fun, by Nancy Armour. There comes a time at every World Cup when the attitude changes, when those who would have been either too apprehensive or too indifferent to get on board go all in and race to catch up with the diehards. They buy the jerseys, paint their faces, start scheduling their lives around the games, get so invested they will explain the offside rule to anyone who will listen. So many people flood the bandwagon, it threatens to tip over, and the whole country is off on a raucous, joyous ride. This is that time. If you're not enchanted with the U.S. men's national team after the Americans' 2-0 win over Australia on June 19th, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of fun for these next few weeks. That's the biggest goal in this whole thing, right? Let's do something special as a team, because we believe in one another as teammates and the capability that we have. But to have a whole nation behind you, that's something so special, Tyler Adams said after the win, which secured the U.S. MNT a spot in the knockout rounds. I just want every game to matter to the common spectator or to people that don't even enjoy soccer, Adams added. That's what it's all about. That's what the growth of the game is about. And I know we have the possibility to do that. Expectations for this U.S. MNT squad were not exactly high before the tournament started. The Americans have only gotten beyond the first knockout game once since 1930, and that quarterfinal run was in 2002. Their performance at last year's Gold Cup was less than inspiring, and then they opened the year with lopsided losses to Belgium and Portugal. Winning the group felt as equally possible as going out after the group stage, but self-belief and momentum can carry a team a long way in a World Cup, and this U.S. MNT has both. I've told these guys that this is the most fun, special, enjoyable group that I've ever been part of, said Captain Tim Ream, who, at 38, has been playing with U.S. MNT since some of his teammates were in grade school. That's not to say that other groups weren't special, that other groups weren't fun, that guys didn't put everything that they possibly could, Ream said, but there's something about this one that just feels different. For the second consecutive game, the U.S. MNT won in commanding fashion, thoroughly dismantling a very solid Australia team. Did it without Christian Pulisic, too. But it's the swagger the players have that is going to endear them to their fellow Americans. This U.S. MNT squad is entertaining. They've scored 6 goals already, one off the team high for an entire World Cup in just 2 games. They're opportunistic, seeking their scoring with an own goal for the second game. They also have that grit Americans love from their teams. Alex Freeman spent several minutes on the grass late in the first half after a hard collision with Paul Oken-Engstler. 5 minutes later, he was nodding in Sergiño Dest's free kick that had been deflected to put up the U.S. MNT 2-0. Adams got body slammed so many times he can be forgiven for wondering if he had wandered into a WWE match. And Folarin Balogun is going to be sore for the next several days after how aggressively the Aussies manhandled or defended him. But rather than whining or wilting, the Americans played on, showing the fight manager Mauricio Pochettino had urged them to when the teams played last fall. A ride like this can't be manufactured, but you can feel it when it's happening. All you had to do was look around the stadium at the end of the game, when the crowd at Lumen Field serenaded the USMNT players with a full-throat rendition of Livin' on a Prayer, the anthem of all improbable runs. We want to be able to win games, but also give everybody in this country something to be proud of, Chris Richards said. Now, the naysayers will say USMNT hasn't played anyone good yet. It's far too early to get overly invested in this group. Well, it's true that neither Paraguay nor Australia is the caliber of Argentina or Spain. They're not slouches either. It wasn't Qatar or Tunisia the USMNT was feasting on. Both Australia and Paraguay are experienced, solid teams, and the USMNT came away with maximum points from each of them. Spain can't say that. We've seen time and time again in sports a team getting hot and feeding off its own success. Heck, the New York Knicks just won the NBA title by doing that. Start rolling, and there's no telling what USMNT can do. Few predicted their 2002 performance when the Americans' upset of Portugal in the opening game fueled a quarterfinal run. And if we're being honest, it really should have been the semis. People can say whatever they want, and people can be surprised, but the pieces have always been there, Ream said. It was just putting them all together. There is a lot of the World Cup left to go, but it already feels as if the USMNT is on the verge of something special. Get on board now, or miss out on the fun. Matt Hayes has written an article, NFL sees NIL chaos and smells a threat to its empire. Would you look at that? The NFL has decided to weigh in on the great college sports debate. It should come as no surprise to anyone that the multi-billion-dollar corporation benefiting greatly from college football's free farm system has decided that, yes, college sports, which practically speaking means college football, needs federal help to keep its house in order. Federal assistance will limit player earning power and movement, the very things the NFL tries to quash during every collective bargaining agreement with its players. The NFL, the NFLPA, and the NEAPA all sent letters to Congress on June 16th, extolling the virtues of everyone working together in peace and harmony to find answers to fix college sports. The players' associations of the two leagues support the Protect College Sports Act because it provides medical and health care benefits, a less publicized but important factor in the bill. The NFL, everyone, has its own agenda. I'm no mind reader, but my guess is the NFL isn't too thrilled about drafting players who are, how can I say this, more hungry for money and social fame than the grind of football. The free farm system of decades past has become a babysitter's club of the biggest and brightest divas. The NFL is wasting development time getting a group of pandered, me-first players acclimated to you're about to get ready to get your ass kicked in a real job. It's a short leap from no rules to no accountability, and the NFL just can't have that. Life was easier for all involved when the number one question recruits had for college coaches was how quickly can you get me to the NFL? Players wanted to compete at the highest level of football and wanted to earn in the process. Now the first question college coaches hear is how quickly can I make my first million or millions? Reaching the NFL, playing with the best of the best, has become secondary. when the drive and desire to be and play with the best is stagnated by cash and attention at the college level, the NFL product suffers. There's a reason the NFL has a 3-year rule for entry into its exclusive league. You can't enter the draft until you're 3 years removed from high school graduation. Again, that's not an NCAA rule, it's an NFL rule. Why, you ask? Because the NFL gets free development from college football. If the NFL had no age requirement, it would be dealing with the same maturity issues now plaguing college football, to say nothing of eliminating the critical benefit of players who leave campus 3 years later with a completely changed physical body and a greater understanding of the game. But there's the NFL, in its infinite wisdom, sending a letter to Congress that says, healthy, stable, and thriving collegiate athletics is essential to the future of American sports, including Olympic sports. By utilizing proven models like the voluntary pooling of media rights under the Sports Broadcasting Act, which supports broad, fan-friendly distribution of NFL games, this legislation will support college athletics and ensure fans will be able to access their favorite games across today's changing media landscape. I'm going to puke. The NFL, the most successful professional sports league on the planet, knows damn well pooling media rights is a crapshoot. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It works famously for the NFL because it has 32 mouths to feed, not 138. And the 138 also have Olympic sports to supplement. It works for the NFL because a limited amount of games creates demand for an elite product. You know, like the limited amount of Big Ten and SEC games creates demand for their product. Ask the NFL if it wants Congress in its business, demanding a free and open market, and the other half desperate for collective bargaining. Ask the NFL if it wants Congress to inform the league that it will pool media rights with the United Football League and the Arena League and its various counterparts to supplement their growth and expansion. The NFL doesn't care about Olympic sports. The NFL cares about football. Its product has become more difficult to manage in the name, image, likeness era, NIL era, and throwing their weight at anything that could limit earning and movement for college players is a win. Player movement is a big problem, easily the #1 issue facing college football. Free movement dries up salaries, and roster salary caps have exploded from Ohio State's $20 million investment in 2024 to Texas, LSU, Oregon, Ohio State, and a few others in the $40 million range 2 years later. This has nothing to do with NIL and everything to do with free player movement. The NFL has heavy restrictions on free player movement. First-round picks are locked in for as many as 5 years, and the last thing it needs is a bunch of free-willing players joining their leagues with thoughts of movement. Because it may not happen immediately, but the current NFL CBA ends in 2030, and a strong percentage of players in the league will have gone through the wild, wild west days of college football, and suddenly the bargaining dynamic changes. The last thing the NFL's billion-dollar ATM wants or needs is a player strike. It's a lot easier to get 1,700 players to strike because they want greater movement flexibility or more money than it is for college football players to coalesce and get more than 14,000 to walk out. So yeah, the NFL isn't exactly doing this out of the goodness of its saving American sports heart. It's doing it selfishly, which places it in the same boat as everyone else in this twisted game. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. Cindy Henderson has written an article, Council Aims to Give Boost to Women in Leadership. Candace Parker knows firsthand how a great coach can change an athlete's life. Parker played under Tennessee women's basketball head coach Pat Summitt, a legendary figure whose influence stretched far past her 8 national championships. If Pat Summitt didn't exist, I don't know if basketball's where it's at right now, Parker told USA Today Sports ahead of the launch of the Sports Beach Women's Leadership Council, fueled by Gatorade. I am super grateful for Coach and all the grenades that she fell on so that we could be where we're at today. Now Parker hopes to open doors for the next generation of change makers. The 3-time WNBA champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame inductee joined the Sports Beach's Women's Leadership Council as a co-chair to help create meaningful pathways for women in coaching or leadership roles, carrying on the work Summitt began decades ago. I would be doing a disservice to everyone that helped me achieve what I wanted to achieve, Parker said. I understand that it's sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But at the end of the day, I think we're all just trying to continue to make sure that our boys and our girls have the same types of opportunities. Sport Beach launches the Women's Leadership Council. Women's sports has experienced unprecedented growth as viewership and attendee records continue to climb. Yet Nadia Rawlinson, the co-owner and operating chairman for the Chicago Sky, told USA Today Sports, growth in and of itself doesn't create opportunity. Parker added the progress in recent years doesn't just stop here, stressing women deserve to be at and to have a seat at the table. And if there isn't a seat at the table, make your own. That's exactly what Sports Beach is doing. The global platform announced the launch of the Women's Leadership Council on June 9th, with the goal of parlaying the current momentum surging women's sports into long-lasting systems that address ongoing diversity and representation gaps. We've now had a year or 2 of that growth and see that this is not just a moment, but something that's here forever, added Rawlinson, a member of the council. We have reset the baseline of what's expected. This is that time to really take that inspiration and move into action to something that can be sustainable over time. The council brings together women from a wide variety of backgrounds, industries, and experiences that offer different perspectives when searching for the best way to elevate female coaches and to amplify their voices. People always ask, what more do you want to see within women's sports? Well, there is. Olympic gymnast Jordan Childs told USA Today Sports, we're standing our ground. We all have our stories. We all have our own experiences. Of the 15 head coaches in the WNBA, 7 are women. There were 5 head coach offerings this season. 3 were filled by men, 2 of whom had never coached women's basketball before. And despite the league being made up of a majority of black players, there are currently no black female head coaches. It's the Women's Leadership Council's inaugural initiative to change that, which will rotate annually. I don't think it's because of the shortage of capability. I think it's just an opportunity thing, and it's figuring out why that exists, Parker explained. I think it's important to have people that look like you lead you. And with that being said, half of our population is women. So therefore, we have to be comfortable with the leadership style of women. The gaps in the coaching ranks underscore how growth at top positions has been a slow burn, an issue that extends far beyond sports. Rawlinson said clear pathways in place for women to enter, remain in, and advance in leadership roles could help reduce subjectivity in decision-making. Women ascending in leadership roles in society, period, There's barriers to do that, she added. That being said, you also need the support and resources to ensure that you have every opportunity to do so. And that comes not from just institutional barriers around who's selected, what criteria are used, what's valued, what's not, who are the people who are making those decisions. So even if criteria is objective, there is subjectivity, and the people who are looking at the criteria and are making those selections. Childs emphasized the importance of having a leader whom you can relate to, pointing to her relationship with UCLA gymnastics coach Janelle McDonald through her college career. Having a woman as a coach, I feel like it's a little easier because obviously you're a woman yourself. You're going through a lot of things. You're growing, there's relationships, friendships, things that it's hard to really talk about to a man because obviously their perspective is going to be different. Childs said, it's easier to tell your coach about things that are happening within your life, especially if it's a woman. You just feel more safe. Parker recalled the lessons Summit instilled in her. Some resonated years later in adulthood. While Parker said her strengths and ability to impact the game reside outside of the X's and O's, she didn't rule out coaching completely. Where my skill set is most beneficial is not in the coaching chair, Parker added, but I will say this. As of late, I have really missed being a part of a team. I'm not planning to pull a Serena Williams or an Allison Felix, so the only opportunity would be to be in the coaching chair. So I'll never say never, but at this point in time, I really love having an impact in other areas, I should say. Bob Nightingale has written an article, The Draft Plan Would Delay Entry of High School Prospects. Major League Baseball is seeking to radically overhaul the amateur draft that would eliminate players from being immediately eligible out of high school, requiring them to be at least 20 in their latest proposal that the players' unions have blasted. MLB made another set of proposals that are flat out bad for baseball, ones that would cripple the next generation of players and damage the future of our game, Bruce Meyer, interim executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association, said in a statement. MLB's proposal, which would begin in 2028, would require players to be at least 20 years old by September 1st of their draft year and at least 2 years after their high school graduation. MLB is also seeking to reduce the draft from 20 rounds to 12 with a $200 million draft pool, a reduction from $358.7 million, while also implementing a 12-round international draft. The proposal was called the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life by one veteran agent, with one MLB scouting director saying, let's just kill the game. MLB's proposal would eliminate more than $1 billion in player compensation from the international and domestic system over the next 5 years, with a $400 million reduction in 2026 and 2027, Meyer said. He also believes that it would destroy fundamental player rights and remove talent from our sport by barring high school and junior college players, in other words, anyone under the age of 20, from the domestic draft, and delaying international signings until September 2027 would be denying young international players the ability to start their professional careers. MLB has sent an edict to all teams, development, and scouting departments, powerful agent Scott Boras has said. They're not worthy of developing young players. Boras continued, they're berating franchises, they're berating players, and berating the game for even suggesting this. The proposal would incentivize players to attend college, MLB says, allowing them to develop while still being paid with name, image, and likeness, or NIL funds. Players wouldn't necessarily need to be an active college player, but could be drafted after playing in independent baseball or an MLB draft league. In return, MLB would lower the qualifications for college players to be drafted after their sophomore season instead of their junior year. MLB lauds the success of collegiate programs, saying it has become increasingly central to the developing future major leaguers, with 75% of MLB players having played in college. College baseball is not set up for development, one scouting director said. It's to win games. So many freshmen don't even get to play. Said Boras, any good college coach plays their seniors and juniors, so this group is going to college would not be playing. These older players will be taking up their playing time. That's why we have professional choices. You're playing 60 games in college. Playing professionally, you learn how to play 140 games. You learn how to psychologically survive the game. Well, Boras and others insist the new proposal is designed strictly to save money and assure players won't be able to hit free agency early to capitalize on their skills. MLB says the college ranks will prepare players quicker to make the transition to MLB. Over the last several years, college baseball has undergone a remarkable transformation, MLB said in a statement, expanding scholarships, NIL opportunities, revenue sharing, and significant investments in facilities and player development have made college baseball an increasingly important pathway that is producing major league-ready talent at an accelerated rate. Today's top programs provide players with resources, competition, and national exposure that were unimaginable a decade ago. Our proposal is designed to build on that momentum to benefit the game at the college, minor league, and major league levels. By creating a draft system centered around college-age players and making most college players eligible 1 year earlier, more players will benefit from both a college education and an elite development environment while reaching professional baseball, and ultimately the major leagues more quickly. We believe these changes will strengthen college baseball and deepen fans' connections to the next generation of major league stars. MLB said that if its proposal is implemented, 86% of the top 40 selections in the 2025 draft would have been eligible a year earlier under the new eligibility rules. The new draft would also enable teams to trade first-round picks for the first time since the draft was implemented in 1965, but not in consecutive years. No club would be allowed to accrue more than 3 extra picks within the first 3 rounds. It would also require at least 10 players to attend the draft and would receive a $50,000 bonus. There wasn't a single first-round pick last year that attended the draft. The proposal would not reduce the number of minor league teams, which currently is at 120, MLB said, through at least 2030. MLB also is lowering the draft lottery selections from 6 to 4, with no team eligible to receive a lottery selection for 3 consecutive years. MLB also wants to implement a 12-round international draft. The international draft, which was proposed in the 2021 collective bargaining agreement in return for eliminating qualifying offers for free agents, would be 12 rounds and restricted to players who are at least 18, with a signing bonus pool of $200 million for international players. International players who aren't drafted would be limited to a maximum $10,000 signing bonus while receiving a $30,000 bonus once they complete a full minor league season. Yet, as several MLB executives pointed out, the proposal means kids born in the United States would be penalized, having to wait 2 years longer than the international players to sign MLB contracts. It is long past time to reform the international amateur system in ways that would address longstanding challenges and benefit future players, MLB said in a statement. The enhanced transparency of the international draft that we are proposing is a common sense step forward that best addresses the root causes of corruption in the current system. The draft would help diminish the corruption in foreign countries, MLB says, with teams reaching deals with kids who are 10 years or older, which has resulted in falsifying birth certificates, with performance-enhancing drugs becoming more rampant. MLB would also implement an international scouting and medical combine for the top 300 international prospects. Continuing with, you're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Continuing with the MLB article. The union believes MLB wants an international draft strictly as a cost-saving measure for clubs, just like the reasoning for a reduced domestic draft. The later they enter MLB, the later they hit free agency. The later they hit free agency, the older they'll be. And the older they'll be, the less money they'll be paid. Juan Soto signed with the Washington Nationals at 16, reached the big leagues at 19, and is the highest paid player with a $765 million contract. Vladimir Guerrero, signed by the Toronto Blue Jays at 16, signed a 14-year, $500 million contract when he was 26. Boras predicts it will drive young athletes to other sports. Barring American boys of choices and representation will certainly redirect the best youth athletes to other sports, Boras said. Franchises build their futures on Bobby Witt, Gunnar Hendersons, and Ellie De La Cruzes, and in the past drafts, the Bryce Harpers, Ken Griffey's, A-Rods, and now they deny those players and teams the right of choice. Moving on to the life section of USA Today, Patrick Ryan has written about the movie Robin Hood. Jackman goes deep for brutal retelling of Robin Hood. Hugh Jackman has fought mutants, slayed vampires, and gone toe-to-toe dancing with Zac Efron. But no physical feat has ever pushed him to his breaking point, quite like The Death of Robin Hood, which is now in theaters. It is a hyper-violent spin on the English legend about a dashing outlaw who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. Jackman inversely plays a grizzled, callous Robin who reveals early on that all the heroic stories about him are false, and that he actually spent decades killing men, women, and even children for the thrill of it. In the film's ghastliest sequence, he faces off with a vengeful foe, played by Elijah Ungaferi, in a mucky field at nightfall, ripping the man's extremities apart and impaling his face with a torch. I've never been tired of doing any action scenes or Broadway shows, Jackman says, but filming that vicious snow showdown in the dead of winter in Ireland, I was absolutely at my limit and close to pulling the plug. I didn't think I could go any farther, which has never happened to me before. Even still, I get a real kick out of trying to make it seem as believable as possible, Jackman adds with a smile, recalling how the gruesome endeavor bonded the actors. Let me tell you, we got to know each other. I'm still getting mud out of places I don't want to tell you about. Like many of us, Jackman's introduction to Robin Hood was the 1973 Disney animated classic featuring a cast of talking animals. I absolutely loved it. That was the one for me, the Aussie actor said. But his now-grown kids mostly knew the character from 2001's Shrek, which I've seen about 400 times. Funnily enough, he had more of a French accent, which is probably more historically accurate. The tales of Robin Hood have been passed down since the 1400s, with one particular ballad, Robin Hood's Death, that is loosely the basis for this movie. Reading the poems, it's surprising to see how unpleasantly violent they are, says filmmaker Michael Snarowski. Robin's chopping off people's head and wearing them into town as disguises. It's like, wait, is this fun? People think our movie is subverting Robin and making him a brutal guy, but the world was just naturally brutal and precarious back then. Robin's love interest, Maid Marian, is spoken of only in passing, while his trusted sidekick, Little John, Bill Skarsgård, is now a tragic figure. On some level, Robin was a cult leader who was recruiting young men and boys and filling their minds with ideas of adventure and heroism, Snarowski said. But really, he was just using them as a means to do terrible things and have power over people. We get to explore, what does that do to Little John down the line? He's almost like Frankenstein's monster. Lest you think this Robin Hood seems almost unbearably grim, our fallen hero does have some semblance of salvation. After Robin is gravely injured, he is taken in by the sage prioress Bridget, played by Jodie Comer, who nurses him back to health at an island convent. Feeling reflective on the brink of death, Robin learns about self-forgiveness from Bridget and how to take accountability for his actions while not letting them define him. What I loved is that she's trying to bring him back to himself, Comer says. Although Bridget is not fully aware of the extent of his atrocities, she is encouraging him to reclaim his innate power and to not be trapped in this stagnation of guilt and shame. Reading the script, what stood out to me was the humanity, Jackman says. Yes, it's violent, but we're not celebrating it. We're making it uncomfortable and visceral. Ultimately, the movie has a beautiful, redemptive arc in it. It's incredibly moving. The prioress character is from one of the oldest Robin Hood stories, Sarnowski says, although she's very much portrayed as the evil nun, while Robin is the sweet, good guy. That seemed a little simplistic, so a lot of this movie became about how to explore her in a deeper way. Comer dove into medieval healthcare as she prepped for the film, and like Sister Bridget, she enjoyed getting her hands dirty in the gardens and orchards. And similar to Jackman, she also had to stomach her fair share of gore, with long, intimate sequences of the prioress drawing the sickly Robin's blood. Using practical effects, you've got this whole rig pumping the blood, and I was amazed at how real it looked, Comer recalls, wide-eyed. Although I need to give my dad a heads up before he watches this. He's a bit squeamish, so I don't think he's going to be a fan. A brief article under Lifeline, Royals report on Princess Kate. Princess Kate returned at Royal Ascot looking radiant in canary yellow. The princess, 44, teamed the short-sleeved dress with an oversized yellow hat for the annual horse racing event, which she had not attended since 2023 after being diagnosed with cancer in 2024. On June 17th, Kate rode in a carriage beside her husband, Prince William, as part of the royal procession. The future king wore a dark suit and top hat, complete with a yellow flower on his lapel, echoing his wife's summer look. The princess once again honored her late mother-in-law, Princess Diana, wearing Diana's three-strand pearl bracelet for the event. Brian Truitt has written an article about movies. Hanks is at peace with Woody's bald spot. Age comes for everyone, even beloved Toy Story characters. Some parents and grown-up fans of the Pixar animated franchise may feel extremely seen in the new Toy Story 5 in theaters June 19th with the presence of Woody, voiced by Tom Hanks since the character's first big screen appearance in 1995. The do-gooding cowboy who helps out other toys on a regular returns in the latest film to see his old friends wearing his signature hat and a new poncho. They give him grief for that, but it's also made quite apparent that he's getting older. Woody's now rocking a bit of a bald spot on the top of that plastic noggin, and he's even got a bit of a paunch, too. What are you, some type of old man toy? The antagonistic tablet, Lily Pad, voiced by Greta Lee, snarks at him. She thinks you're older because you're bald, Woody, deadpans Forky, voiced by Tony Hale, in case he didn't hear. Because he's old. Adults can, without a doubt, relate to Woody in a whole new way, Hank says. There's such a thing as mileage that comes off synonymous with age. That bald spot comes from that hat that just has gone on and off way too many times, and it wore away the organic material inside there. I would like to say that he's aged because he's just been so damn busy solving problems and saving the day, the actor adds. Look, he doesn't have any threads coming loose. So as long as he remains solvent in that way, all will be well. But a bald spot can be covered by the right shade of Sharpie pen, right? In an interview with his longtime Toy Story co-star, Tim Allen, who plays Buzz Lightyear, throws out burnt orange as a color option, while Hanks thinks rust would work. What's wrong with going in that direction, Hank says. It's all cosmetic anyway. Talking about age and their characters finds Hanks and Allen reminiscing about their early days in the Toy Story movies. The media tour leading up to the release of the first film was classic me, says Allen, a sitcom star at the time with Home Improvement. I was new at this. Tom wasn't new at this, so I was kind of learning from him without asking him just what do you do. He told me to shut up and just answer the questions. Otherwise, it takes longer. Allen tells the story how, on a lunch break, Hanks once ate a French fry off of his plate, leaving Allen aghast. I come from a very large family, mostly men, 7 boys, 2 girls, and we didn't do that, he said. I mean, you really didn't do that. He goes, I'm just taking a French fry. And I go, no, might as well take the plate. I don't want to touch that plate again, adds Hanks. Isn't that Buzz and Woody in a nutshell right there? And we weren't even trying. He remembers being as amazed as everyone about how good the OG Toy Story turned out. We had never seen anything like this before, Hank said. We'd got in, we'd recorded it, but alone, and then they go off and they turn it into this thing that was just undeniable. It was just a brand new movie experience. It was kind of like seeing Technicolor for the first time, or seeing sound for the first time. I couldn't quite put my finger on why it was so delightful, but it was delightful. It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Singer Howard Kaylan with the Turtles turned 79. Singer Todd Rundgren, 78. Actor Meryl Streep, 77. Actor Lindsay Wagner, 77. Politician Elizabeth Warren, 77. Singer Cyndi Lauper, 73. Actor Tim Russ, 70. Actor Bruce Campbell, 68. Activist, former whistleblower Erin Brockovich, 66. Actor-director Stephen Chow, 64. Actor-producer Amy Brenneman, 62. And TV radio host Carson Daly, 53. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. The theme of today's horoscope is sanctuary. If you're Aries, born on March 21st through April 19th, take the initiative in a relationship. Connections feel warm and inviting. If you're Taurus, born between April 20th and May 20th, are you feeling in your groove? The Libra moon harmonizes with Venus today, bringing ease to your routines. Enjoy the comfort. If you're Gemini, born May 21st to June 21st, have them wrapped around your finger. There's a natural charm in how you communicate now. Express what you want. If you're Cancer, born June 22nd to July 22nd, comfort and stability align today. Feeling supported and at home with yourselves, savor abundance. If you're Leo, July 23rd through August 22nd, August 22nd, communication is the sweet spot of your day. Everyone wants your ear. If you're a Virgo, you were born between August 23rd and September 22nd. Releasing the need to prove yourselves, settle into your value. Your self-worth grows. If you're a Libra, you were born September 23rd to October 23rd. Tell them you love them. Friends can benefit from your expressed appreciation today. Reach out and show you care. If you're a Scorpio, you were born between October 24th and November 21st. Attracting success, get clear about what you want to bring it your way. The Libra moon meeting Venus helps you align. If you're a Sagittarius, you were born between November 22nd and December 21st. Engage with people who broaden your perspective. Feeling encouraged by what they have to share, turn this inspiration into action. If you're a Capricorn, you were born between December 22nd and January 19th. You look good when you team up with others. Is there a collaboration in the mix? Combine talents for success. If you're Aquarius, you were born January 20th to February 18th. Getting on the same page, the Libra moon harmonizes with Venus today, offering an opportunity to grow as a team. And if you're Pisces, you were born between February 19th and March 20th, take a load off today. Rebalancing becomes a priority. You deserve a break. Aaron Jensen wrote an article called Maternal Details Taylor Parker's Deception. Taylor Parker is the subject of Netflix true crime documentary Maternal Instinct. In pictures, Taylor Parker looked like a happy, expectant mom with her boyfriend Wade Griffin. The couple, living in New Boston, Texas, about 160 miles northeast of Dallas, hadn't been together long when she told him she was pregnant. Their baby girl would be born in September 2020. It was all a lie. Parker was unable to have children after a hysterectomy, a fact she never told her boyfriend. Still, she started buying baby clothes. She wore a fake pregnancy belly. She convinced a friend to host a gender reveal party. Suspicious, Griffin's family watched the calendar as her due date approached. When it passed, Griffin confronted her. Rather than confess, she committed a heinous crime which landed her on Texas death row. Netflix true crime documentary Maternal Instinct, now streaming, traces Parker's numerous lies and grisly actions. Here's what you should know about Parker and her case. In 2019, Reagan Simmons Hancock, 20 years old, was looking for a photographer for her wedding to Homer Hancock. She hired Taylor Parker, who had started taking photos as a side job, and the two hit it off. On the wedding day, it didn't feel like she was just some random stranger none of us had ever met, Simmons Hancock's sister Emily Shirey says in the documentary. It almost felt like she was a bridesmaid at one point, because she was in all of our selfies. Simmons Hancock and Parker remained friendly even after the wedding. In 2020, Simmons Hancock became pregnant with her second child. Parker said she was pregnant too. Not long before Simmons Hancock was due, she and Parker spent some time together, and Parker said she would be induced the next day. Reagan felt like Taylor was probably overwhelmed with everything, Simmons Hancock mom Jessica Brooks says, and she was trying to be that one person there for her when nobody else was. The next day, Parker returned to Simmons Hancock's house, where she killed the expectant 21-year-old mother and extracted her unborn baby. Simmons Hancock's young daughter was still in the house. Parker then tries to pass the baby off as her own, but ended up calling 911 from her car when the baby wasn't breathing. Pulled over by the police, she told authorities she had just given birth, pleading to be taken to the hospital. She even inserted the baby's umbilical cord into her pants. Doctors at the hospital quickly determined that Parker had not given birth and alerted the police, who took her into custody. Simmons Hancock and her daughter, whom she'd planned to name Braxlyn, did not survive. Christopher Mason, an OB/GYN, became emotional during his testimony in the case, thinking of Parker's disregard for Simmons Hancock. It had to be extremely painful, Mason says. I do not know how anybody could do that. A jury convicted Parker of capital murder in 2022 and sentenced her to death. She lost an appeal in November 2025, and in May 2026, the Supreme Court declined to review her case. Parker is currently awaiting her execution at Patrick L. O'Daniel Unit in Gatesville, Tennessee, Texas, about 42 miles from west of Waco. For a February 2025 New Yorker story, journalist Lawrence Wright spoke with Parker, who said she initially didn't believe the charges. I told myself, you didn't do what they said. It's lies, she said. My realization came when I had to face the autopsy photos. Parker also seemed content in prison at the time. It's the hardest thing to admit, but I do not believe I'm going home for myself. My place is here, she told Wright. I stand firm on the belief you do not deserve to have something you took from another. That's part of the acknowledgement and acceptance process on the road to redemption. As the youngest woman on death row in Texas, Parker told Wright she was the one known as the baby because she's everybody's kid's age. She remains one of 7 female inmates who've been sentenced to death in Texas. According to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, her execution date has not yet been scheduled. Brian Truitt has written a movie article called We Sing Praises of Rudd's Everyman. 2 things are true about Paul Rudd. He's hardly aged in the last 30 years, and he has a deep bench of memorable roles. Rudd mainly is known for his comedic supporting turns and being Marvel's smallest Avenger, but the actor brings his signature everyman flair to a deeper character in the musical dramedy Power Ballad in theaters now, playing a wedding band singer who is done dirty by an ex-boy band star played by Nick Jonas. Rudd's career also has been marked by creating dynamic scenes with frequent co-stars, including Steve Carell, Leslie Mann, Seth Rogen, and Jason Segel, not to mention the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. To celebrate a newcomer to the list, we're ranking Rudd's best movie roles. Number 15, Tommy Doyle in Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers in 1995. Rudd says he's awful in the 6th Halloween installment, where he plays an older version of a boy whom Jamie Lee Curtis babysat in the original 1978 movie. But taking on the iconic masked man Michael Myers in your first movie, and in one cut of the film actually beating the horror villain, respect. Number 14, John Lennon, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story in 2007. Folk country icon Dewey, played by John C. Reilly, takes LSD with the Beatles in this musical comedy, and Rudd plays Lennon along Jack Black as Paul McCartney, Justin Long, George Harrison, and Jason Schwartzman playing Ringo Starr. A too brief appearance, but worth it thanks to Rudd's hilariously over-the-top Lilliputian pronunciation of Imagine. 13 Josh in Clueless in 1995. Okay, it's a little weird that a fashionable high schooler, Cher, played by Alicia Silverstone, and her older stepbrother, Josh, played by Rudd, have the hots for each other in the teen comedy cult classic. It's also an early showcase of Rudd's considerable charm, as his character is immersed in a love triangle drama and sibling banter. Elliot in Death of a Unicorn in 2025. The dark comedy casts Rudd as a recently widowed attorney, Elliot, who, on the way to work, meeting in the Rockies with his estranged daughter, played by Jenna Ortega, hits a baby unicorn with his rental SUV. The actor gets an intriguing arc of corporate shill to hero dad among bonkers gore when the fool's angry parents show up. Gary Gruberson in Ghostbusters Afterlife in 2021. While the youthful reboot of the paranormal comedy franchise had its rocky aspects, Rudd is one of the steadier highlights. Gary is a fun summer school teacher who connects to bright and weird Phoebe Spengler, played by McKenna Grace, and who also has to deal with mischievous mini Stay Puffs in an expansion of the Ghostbusters mythology. Chuck in Forgetting Sarah Marshall in 2008. Jason Segel is the sad sack in Hawaii trying to move on from his ex, only to run into her in paradise, and Rudd is one of the guys helping him get his groove back as an oddly philosophical surf instructor. Come for the laid-back vibes, stay for such creative bon mots as when life gives you lemons, just say, expletive the lemons, and bail. Number 9, Austin Carmichael in Friendship in 2024. Playing a life-of-the-party weatherman, Rudd is the straight man to Tim Robinson's awkward marketing executive Craig in the suburban dark comedy. After these neighbors strike up a bond, Craig's strangely clingy behavior sours his bud, and it's a cringy train wreck as their relationship crashes spectacularly off the rails. Number 8, Andy in Wet, Hot American Summer in 2001. He often is cast as a good dude, but Rudd has proven he can nail being a ne'er-do-well as well. In this 1981 set summer camp comedy, an early outing for many A-listers, including Bradley Cooper, Elizabeth Banks, and Amy Poehler, Rudd is an insufferable camp counselor who cheats on his girlfriend and is quite possibly the worst lifeguard ever. 7, Pete in Knocked Up in 2007, and This Is 40 in 2012. Rudd and Leslie Mann's complicated couple, Pete and Debbie, were supporting players in Judge Apatow's Knocked Up before getting the spotlight in This Is 40. Pete usually is irritating Debbie, but from navigating trust issues to preparing for another kid, it's enjoyable watching them find their way. Rick Power in Power Ballad, 2026. Not only does Rudd rock a wide-ranging performance, he sings. Years past his stardom, Rick now fronts a wedding band and enjoys a fruitful jam session with a former boy bander, Nick Jonas, going solo. The younger guy's use of Rick's musical idea and turning it into a worldwide hit sparks a thoughtful quest about fame and credit. Number 5, David, the 40-year-old virgin. If you are interested in hearing the rest of this article, please contact the Radio Reading Service. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for June 22nd. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader today is Val.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 5 of To Rescue the American Spirit by Brett Baer. Following that, at 3 o'clock, is Smithsonian Magazine, and the 4 o'clock re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We broadcast daily readings of printed matter to those who are blind or have a print disability throughout Buffalo, Western New York, and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNET. Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service broadcast studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. Please let others know about your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability